In the heart of the Persian Empire, where power was absolute and a king's word meant life or death, a secret destiny began to unfold. This is the story of a woman who rose from obscurity to royalty, not by ambition, but by providence. Her name was Esther, the hidden queen who changed the fate of her people. A story of beauty, courage, and faith set against the glittering halls of power and the shadow of destruction. It is a tale of betrayal and redemption, of silence and bravery, and of a single act that turned despair into deliverance. The Persian Empire under King Ahasuerus, known to history as Xerxes, stretched from India to Ethiopia. He ruled over 127 provinces with unmatched wealth and pride. His palaces shimmered with marble columns and golden pillars. His court was filled with nobles and soldiers sworn to his name. The empire was vast, its power immense, its glory unquestioned. Yet within those walls of power, vanity ruled as fiercely as law. And within that world of grandeur and danger, even a queen could fall, and one did. At a royal feast that lasted 7 days, the king's heart was merry with wine. He commanded Queen Vashti to appear before his guests, to display her beauty before the gathered lords of Persia and Media. But Vashti refused, a defiance that shook the foundations of royal authority. Her refusal was more than disobedience, it was rebellion. In anger and humiliation, the king decreed that Vashti would never again stand before him. She was stripped of her crown and cast from the palace. The empire that had once bowed before her now spoke her name only in whispers. And so, a vacancy appeared, a space that destiny was waiting to fill. Far from the Golden Palace, in the quiet Jewish quarter of Susa, lived a young woman named Hadassah. Orphaned as a child, she was raised by her cousin Mordecai, a man of deep faith and quiet strength. When the royal decree was issued to gather the most beautiful maidens in the empire for the king's selection, Hadassah was taken among them. But in the palace she was given a new name, Esther. No one knew her true heritage, for Mordecai had warned her to keep it hidden. In a world where identity could mean death, secrecy became her protection. The harem of the palace was a world of competition and illusion. Each maiden prepared for months. Perfumes, oils, fine garments, all meant to please a king they barely knew. But Esther's strength was not in her beauty alone. It was her gentleness, her grace, her humility that set her apart. Where others sought attention, she sought wisdom. Where others spoke loudly, she listened. When she finally stood before the king, the great hall fell silent. Xerxes looked upon her, and in that moment, something within him stilled. He placed the royal crown upon her head. The orphan became queen of the greatest empire on earth. Yet even in her glory, Esther remained silent about who she truly was. In the shadows of the court, ambition festered. Haman, the king's most powerful minister, rose higher with every passing day. He was cunning, proud, and ruthless. When Mordecai, Esther's cousin, refused to bow before him, Haman's pride turned to venom. Learning that Mordecai was a Jew, Haman's hatred spread beyond one man. It became an obsession to destroy an entire people. Through deception and manipulation, he convinced the king to sign a decree. On one appointed day, it read, "All Jews throughout the empire shall be annihilated, young and old, women and children alike." The decree was sealed with the royal ring. With one stroke of ink, an empire had condemned an entire nation. When Mordecai learned of this, he tore his clothes, clothed himself in ashes, and wept in the streets. The wails of despair spread through the Jewish quarters of every city. In the palace, Esther received word of the decree and of Mordecai's mourning. He sent her a message. She must go before the king and plead for her people's lives. But to appear before the king uninvited was forbidden, punishable by death, even for the queen herself. For days she fasted. She prayed in silence, her heart trembling between fear and duty. In that silence, courage was born. "If I perish, I perish," she said. And with that, the orphan girl became a warrior in spirit. The great doors of the throne room opened. Golden light flooded the hall as Esther stepped inside, her eyes fixed on the king. Guards tightened their grips on their spears. One breath, then another. The king looked up, surprised, uncertain. Then he extended his golden scepter toward her. She lived. The court exhaled in relief, but the queen's mission had only begun. Esther invited the king and Haman to a private banquet. Behind her calm smile lay a storm of faith and strategy. The queen was setting a divine trap, patiently, quietly, perfectly. At the first banquet, she revealed nothing, choosing instead to invite them to another. Haman left in pride, convinced he was favored by the queen herself. But that night the king could not sleep. He ordered the royal chronicles to be read aloud. It was then that he learned how Mordecai had once uncovered a plot to assassinate him, a deed for which no reward had been given. As dawn broke, Haman entered the court, planning to ask for Mordecai's execution. Before he could speak, the king asked him, "What should be done for the man the king wishes to honor?" Thinking the honor was meant for himself, Haman described a lavish reward: robes, a royal horse, and a parade through the city. The king smiled and said, "Excellent! Do this for Mordecai." The Jew Haman's heart sank, but he had no choice. He paraded the man he hated through the streets, proclaiming his honor. The humiliation burned like fire in his chest. That evening came the second banquet. As the wine flowed and the king asked what Esther desired, she finally spoke. "My life and the lives of my people," she said, "for we have been sold to destruction." The king's face hardened. "Who would dare do such a thing?" he demanded, and Esther turned her gaze toward Haman. "This enemy," she said, "is the adversary." The room froze. The king's fury erupted like a storm. Haman was seized, and his fate was sealed. He was hanged on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. Justice had turned upon the wicked, but the law of death still remained. The decree could not be revoked. The king handed Mordecai his signet ring, granting him the power to write a new decree. It allowed the Jews to defend themselves against any who would attack them. When the appointed day came, those who had plotted their destruction fell instead. The streets that were meant to run with innocent blood echoed instead with victory. The Jews were saved. From mourning to celebration, from fear to freedom, the nation rose in triumph, and the name of Esther was spoken with reverence across the empire. To this day, the Feast of Purim commemorates that deliverance, a time when sorrow was turned into joy and despair into triumph. Esther's story is a testament to divine timing, to courage born in silence, and to the strength of one person's faith when the world turns dark. She changed history not through armies or rebellion, but through wisdom, patience, and courage. The orphan who became queen, the queen who became a savior. History remembers kings and empires, but it was one woman's bravery that outlasted them all. This was the story of Esther, the hidden queen who saved a nation. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share for more powerful stories from history and legend. Your support helps bring more timeless tales to life.